All right, settle in, my friends. Pull your blankets a little tighter. Let the soft glow of your screen be the only light in the room, perhaps like the embers of a dying fire, casting long, dancing shadows on the cave walls. Imagine the vast, silent darkness beyond. Tonight, we're not just going back in time. We're going back to the very edge of human existence, back to a time when the world was raw, untamed, and utterly indifferent to the fragile flicker of our lives. Take a deep breath. Let the modern world melt away. For a little while, we'll journey to an age before names, before nations, before history was ever written down. An age when simply surviving another sunrise was a triumph. It's comforting, isn't it? To think that as you listen somewhere out there, others are also curling up, perhaps under the same moon that shone down on our earliest ancestors. Let me know, if you wish, where you are listening from tonight. It connects us across time zones, across continents, just as the shared experience of humanity connected those who came before us. We often imagine ourselves as the masters of this planet, standing tall, shaping the world to our will. But for a brief, terrifying moment, not so long ago in the grand sweep of Earth's story, we were nothing more than a whisper in the wind, a tiny, struggling species on the brink of vanishing forever. We were an endangered species, hiding in the shadows, waiting for a winter that threatened to never end. Tonight, we listen to the echoes of that time. Tonight, we tell the story of the year the sun disappeared. Picture this, 74,000 years ago. The world, for the most part, was a symphony of green and life. Imagine the island of Sumatra, not as it is today, but as a colossal emerald jewel, teeming with ancient, vibrant energy. The air, thick and humid, hummed with the ceaseless chatter of unseen insects, the rustle of giant leaves, the distant, guttural calls of creatures long gone. Sunlight, dappled and warm, filtered through the dense canopy of primordial rainforests, painting shifting patterns on the forest floor. The ground beneath your bare feet would have been soft, damp earth, smelling of rich soil and decaying leaves. Every step a quiet crunch, a gentle give. Towering trees, older than any story, reached for the sky, their branches interwoven like a vast, living cathedral. Here, life was abundant, a generous feast for those who knew how to find it. Wild fruits hung heavy on branches, their skins glistening. Clear streams, fed by mountain springs, burbled over smooth stones, offering cool, sweet water. Deep within these verdant jungles, and across the vast, sprawling continents of Africa, Asia, and beyond, lived our ancestors. Not just Homo sapiens like us, but perhaps also our cousins, the Homo erectus, their forms a little more robust, their minds just as keen, their instincts just as sharp. They moved through this world with an intimate knowledge, a deep connection to the rhythm of nature. Their senses were their survival guides. The scent of rain on the wind, the subtle shift in a bird's song, the faint tremor in the earth, Thou. Each was a message, a warning, a promise. They lived in small bands, perhaps 20 or 30 souls, their lives woven together by the shared hunt, the communal fire, the silent understanding that passed between eyes around a flickering flame. Their days were spent in the timeless pursuit of sustenance, tracking antelope across sun-drenched savannas, patiently waiting by riverbanks for fish, gathering roots and berries in shaded groves. Their nights were spent under a sky ablaze with stars, a cosmic map that told stories and marked the passage of time. The only light, a precious fire carefully tended, its smoke mingling with the cool night air carrying the scent of wood and warmth. Imagine the soundscape of their nights. The gentle crackle of the fire, a constant comforting heartbeat. The deep, rhythmic breathing of your sleeping companions, a symphony of shared existence. Beyond the firelight, the jungle whispered its secrets. The soft padding of a nocturnal creature, the distant roar of a saber-toothed tiger, a sound that would send a shiver down your spine, but also a sound that was simply part of the world and known danger. They knew hunger, they knew fear, they knew the bite of a cold wind, but they also knew the profound comfort of a full belly, the warmth of a shared embrace, the quiet joy of a successful hunt. They were attuned to the pulse of the earth, to the subtle shifts in seasons, to the migration of animals. They read the land like an open book, every rock, every tree, every ripple in a stream a page of vital information. Yet, for all their wisdom, for all their deep connection to the natural world, they had no way of knowing, no way of comprehending the immense, silent power stirring beneath the surface of that beautiful green island. The earth, their mother, was about to clear its throat, to let out a cough that would echo through generations, a soundless scream that would reset the clock of life and plunge humanity to the very edge of oblivion. They would have woken that morning, perhaps, to the familiar calls of jungle birds, the soft glow of dawn filtering through the leaves. They would have stretched, rubbed the sleep from their eyes, and begun another day. Just like any other, the air would have been still, perhaps a little heavy. The animals might have been unusually quiet, their instincts sensing a subtle shift, a tremor in the fabric of their world that humans, with all their nascent intellect, could not yet perceive. It was the calm before the silence, a final precious moments of a world that was about to be irrevocably changed, a world where the sun shone bright, the air was clear, and the future, though uncertain, was always promised with the next sunrise. They were living on the very brink of a cosmic event, utterly unaware, simply existing, breathing, dreaming under the vast, indifferent sky. Then the quiet began to break, not with a sudden, deafening roar that would shatter the eardrums, but with a deep, resonant rumble. A sound that didn't just vibrate the air, but vibrated through the very bones of the earth. Imagine a low, continuous growl, rising from deep within the planet's core. A sound you feel more than hear. It would have started subtly, a distant tremor, like a giant animal stirring in its sleep, far, far below the surface. The ground beneath your feet, which had always been solid, dependable, would have begun to hum. A gentle, persistent vibration that would make the leaves on the trees shiver, the water in the streams ripple, and the small stones on the path dance. This was the prelude. The earth itself was preparing to breathe. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the sky began to change. Not a dramatic, sudden darkening, but a gradual, unsettling shift in hue. Imagine the familiar blue, the comforting canvas of day, beginning to take on a strange, bruised quality, a faint, almost sickly yellow, then a deepening orange bleeding into an ominous red, like a wound opening in the heavens. It was as if the very air was thickening, becoming heavy, laden with an unseen presence. Then, from the heart of that emerald island, from the very core of what we now call Lake Toba, a mountain began to exhale, not in a single, violent burst, but as a series of colossal, rhythmic pulses. Imagine a vast silent column, not of smoke, but of pure, raw earth, rock and gas, rising majestically, impossibly high into the atmosphere. It wasn't a sudden explosion that would startle you awake. It was a slow, inexorable exhalation, a monumental release of pressure that had been building for millennia. The column climbed higher and higher, piercing through the clouds, pushing past the troposphere, reaching into the serene, silent expanse of the stratosphere. It was a plume of such immense scale that it would have dwarfed any mountain, any storm, any structure known to man. It spread outwards, a vast dark umbrella unfurling across the sky, and as this colossal plume ascended, the light began to fade. The sun, which had been a constant, life-giving presence since the dawn of time, began to dim. It was as if a giant hand had slowly, deliberately drawn a veil across its face. The world didn't just get darker, it transformed. The vibrant greens of the jungle began to lose their luster. The bright blues of the sky became muted, then gray, then an oppressive, inky blackness that descended in the middle of the day. This wasn't the welcoming darkness of night, filled with the familiar sounds of crickets and nocturnal creatures. This was a profound, unnatural twilight, a silent, choking darkness that crept in, stealing the colors, dulling the sounds, wrapping the world in an eerie, unsettling hush. The air grew heavy, thick with an invisible dust that began to settle on everything. Then it began to fall, not rain, but something stranger, something utterly alien. Imagine tiny, almost imperceptible flakes, not white and soft like snow, but a fine, gritty powder, the color of ash and sorrow. It drifted down from the darkened sky silently, relentlessly. Volcanic ash. Tiny fragments of the earth's heart, now suspended in the air, falling like a slow gray snow. It would have settled on the broad leaves of the jungle plants, turning them from emerald to a dull, dusty gray. It would have coated the fur of animals, clinging to their whiskers and eyelashes. It would have fallen into the rivers, turning their clear waters murky and thick. And it would have fallen onto the skin of our ancestors, a fine, gritty layer that they couldn't brush away, a constant reminder of the profound, terrifying change that had just begun. The air, once sweet and humid, now carried the faint, acrid scent of sulfur, a metallic tang that pricked at the back of the throat. Breathing might have become a little harder, a subtle rasp in the lungs. But still, there was no panic, not yet. Only a deep, primal confusion. What was this? What had happened to the sun? What was this strange, gray snow that fell from a sky that should have been blue? The mountain continued its slow, powerful exhalation, a process that might have lasted for days or even weeks. Each pulse sending more and more material into the stratosphere, each breath further obscuring the sun, further deepening the global twilight. The earth had spoken, not with a shout, but with a deep, rumbling sigh, and the world was listening, held captive in its silent, ash-filled embrace. And then the silence truly descended, a silence born not of peace, but of absence. The sun, our ancient beacon, our constant companion, was gone. Not literally, of course, but it was hidden, swallowed by an unimaginable blanket of pulverized rock and gas. Imagine standing on the African savanna, thousands of miles away from the erupting mountain, and looking up. The sky, which had always been a brilliant, limitless blue, was now a uniform, oppressive gray. The colossal ash cloud, propelled by powerful stratospheric winds, began its silent, relentless journey around the globe. It was a vast, invisible shroud spreading outwards from Sumatra, encompassing continents, drifting across oceans, painting the entire world in shades of charcoal and dust. This was the year the sun disappeared. The most immediate and perhaps the most terrifying consequence was the light, or rather, the lack of it. Day became an eternal twilight. The world was bathed in a dim, filtered gloom, a perpetual dawn or dusk that never quite brightened. Colors faded, as if the world itself was holding its breath, drained of its vibrancy. The lush greens of the forests turned to muted olives. The rich reds of the soil became dull browns, and the bright blues of distant mountains simply vanished into the pervasive haze. Imagine living under such a sky. Every day, a struggle to perceive. Shapes would be blurred, distances difficult to judge. The familiar landmarks, the trees, the rivers, the distant hills, would all appear as ghostly silhouettes, half hidden in the perpetual gloom. It was a world seen through a dirty window, forever obscured, forever muted. But the dimming light was just the beginning. As the ash cloud thickened and spread, it began to block not only the light, but also the sun's warmth. The temperature across the entire planet began to fall. Slowly, steadily, relentlessly. Consider the African savanna, a place synonymous with heat and life. Now, imagine the air growing crisp, then cold, then biting. The familiar searing sun no longer beat down, but was replaced by a weak, diffuse glow that offered no warmth. The nights, always cooler, became truly frigid. Frost, a phenomenon rarely seen in many parts of Africa, would have begun to paint the landscape in crystalline white. The subtle chill deepened into a profound cold. The dry, dusty earth of the savanna, once baking under the sun, now retained a pervasive dampness, a chill that seeped into the bones. The plants, accustomed to endless sunshine and warmth, began to wither. Their leaves, once vibrant and strong, curled and died, turning brittle and brown. Grasses, the staple food for countless herbivores, became sparse, then disappeared under a thin, persistent layer of gray ash. The world seemed to shrink, to draw inward. The vast, open spaces of the plains, once alive with the thundering hooves of migrating herds, now felt empty, desolate, swallowed by the creeping cold and the oppressive gloom. The sounds, too, were muted. The joyous calls of birds, the buzzing of insects, the rustling of leaf cynie, all diminished, hushed by the heavy air, absorbed by the falling ash. For our ancestors, the shift would have been profoundly disorienting. Their entire understanding of the world was built on the rhythm of the sun, the cycle of seasons, the predictable patterns of weather. Now, all of that was broken. The sun, the source of all life, had abandoned them. The cold, a relentless, insidious enemy, began to creep into their shelters, into their very beings. They would have huddled closer to their fires, drawing what little warmth they could from the dwindling embers. Their eyes, accustomed to scanning the horizon for game under a bright sky, now strained in the perpetual dimness, searching for any sign of life, any glimmer of hope in the vast gray expanse. The ash, fine and pervasive, would have settled on everything, on their hair, on their clothes of animal hide, on the food they managed to find. It would have coated the water sources, turning them gritty and unpalatable. Every breath would have drawn in tiny particles, a constant reminder of the monumental silent catastrophe unfolding around them. This wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event that ended everything in a flash. This was a slow, creeping strangulation, a global twilight that heralded a profound, terrifying winter. A winter unlike any they had ever known, a winter that threatened to consume not just the landscape, but the very spark of humanity itself. The world was holding its breath, waiting in a profound, unsettling silence for a sun that might never return. The sun, if it could even be called that, was a bruised, distant memory. The sky, once a canvas of blues and golds, had become a permanent, oppressive gray, a thick blanket woven from ash and despair. This was the Great Winter, not a single season, but a decade-long siege of cold that gripped the world in its silent, icy fist. Imagine standing there, the wind a constant, mournful companion, whipping fine, abrasive ash into your face. It stings your eyes, fills your nostrils with the scent of distant desolation. The air itself feels thin, sharp, like breathing in broken glass. You pull the rough furs tighter around your shoulders, but the cold seeps into your bones, a persistent ache that never truly leaves. The ground beneath your feet is no longer soft earth, but a hard, unforgiving crust. Lakes, once shimmering mirrors reflecting the vibrant life above, are now vast, silent expanses of frozen stillness, their surfaces cracked and groaning under the relentless pressure of the cold. The water, the very essence of life, is locked away, transformed into an unyielding barrier. What little water remains is often brackish, tainted by the ever-present ash, leaving a bitter taste on your tongue. Plants, the silent engineers of life, have withered and died. The lush, verdant forests that once teemed with sounds and shadows are now skeletal remains, their branches brittle, stripped bare by the wind and frost. Every leaf, every blade of grass has succumbed, leaving behind a monochrome landscape of grays, browns, and the occasional stark white of persistent frost. There is no rustling of leaves, no gentle sway of tall grasses. Only the relentless, whispering sigh of the wind through barren branches. This isn't the kind of cold that passes with the morning sun. This is a deep, existential chill that permeates everything. It's in the very stones you sit on, the air you breathe, the silence that presses in from all sides. It is a slow, silent suffocation of the world. The vibrant hum of life has been muted, replaced by an eerie quiet. The familiar calls of birds are gone, the rustling of hidden creatures silenced. The world has become a vast, empty stage, waiting for a play that might never begin. The food chain, once an intricate dance of predators' prey, has shattered. With plants gone, the herbivores starve. With herbivores gone, the carnivores dwindle. You see the gaunt, desperate faces of other animals, their eyes hollow, their movements slow and heavy. They are shadows of their former selves, driven by a raw, primal hunger that mirrors your own. You watch a solitary deer, its ribs stark beneath its matted fur, pawing hopelessly at the frozen ground, searching for a phantom blade of grass. Its breath plumes in the frigid air, a fleeting ghost of life in a dying world. Every day is a struggle against this pervasive emptiness. Every dawn brings the same gray sky, the same biting wind, the same gnawing emptiness in your stomach. Hunger isn't just a feeling, it's a constant, dull throb behind your eyes, a hollow ache in your ribs that never truly recedes. You dream of warmth, of sunlight, of the sweet taste of ripe berries, of the satisfying crunch of a roasted root. But those dreams are quickly replaced by the stark reality of the present. The world feels heavy, burdened by the weight of the ash, by the endless cold. The very air seems to carry a profound sadness, a lament for what was lost. You find yourself moving slower, conserving every ounce of energy. Every step is deliberate, every breath measured. The silence is broken only by the crunch of your feet on the frozen ground, the ragged sound of your own breathing, or the distant mournful howl of the wind. This is the great winter, a time when the earth itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for an end that felt impossibly far away. It was a time of quiet endurance, of silent suffering, under a sky that had forgotten the sun. The vastness of the earth, once teeming with life, now felt impossibly empty. The brutal years of the great winter had taken their toll, not just on the landscape, but on life itself, especially human life. This was the bottleneck, a period of such profound loss that it almost erased us from the face of the planet. Imagine a thriving river, wide and full, flowing with countless streams and currents. Then suddenly, it is forced through a narrow rocky gorge, so tight that only a trickle can pass through. That is what happened to humanity. What was once a vibrant, diverse river of hundreds of thousands of individuals, spread across continents, was squeezed down to a mere thread. You remember the stories told around the dwindling fires, whispered in the darkness. Stories of bustling camps, of many voices, of the laughter of children echoing through the valleys. Now, those echoes are gone. The places where your ancestors once gathered, where they hunted and celebrated, are silent, covered in a fine layer of ash or buried under drifts of frozen earth. They are ghost towns of a time that feels impossibly distant, even though it was only a few years ago. The numbers are stark, a chilling testament to the severity of the winter. From perhaps hundreds of thousands scattered across Africa and parts of Asia, the human population plummeted. It wasn't a slow decline, it was a precipitous fall, a catastrophic collapse. Tribe after tribe simply vanished, swallowed by the relentless cold, the pervasive hunger, the sheer impossibility of finding sustenance in a world choked by ash. Their fires went out, one by one, leaving only the vast, silent darkness. Think of the sheer emptiness. If you were one of the few remaining, you might walk for days, for weeks, across the barren landscape, never encountering another human soul. The world, once a shared space, had become an immense, desolate wilderness. The familiar scent of wood smoke, the distant call of another tribe, the reassuring presence of human footprints in the dusty, all gone. You were an island, or perhaps a tiny raft adrift on an ocean of silence. This isn't just a statistic, it is a feeling. It is the profound, aching loneliness of knowing that you are one of so few. The weight of your species' survival rests on shoulders that are already burdened by cold and hunger. Every face you see is precious, every voice a fragile melody against the overwhelming silence. You look at the vast gray sky, and it feels as though the earth itself has exhaled, leaving a hollow space where humanity once thrived. We became an endangered species, teetering on the very edge of extinction. Not just threatened, but truly on the brink. A slight shift in the winds, a deeper frost, a particularly harsh season, and we might have been gone forever. The future of every human being who would ever live, every city, every song, every discovery hung by the thinnest of threads. It was a time when the very idea of humanity was reduced to a few scattered whispers, clinging to existence in the desolate corners of a dying world. The sense of scale is almost impossible to grasp. Imagine the entire human population of today reduced to the size of a small village. That is what happened. The vast, interconnected web of human life was severed, leaving behind only isolated, struggling fragments. You are part of a remnant, a forgotten echo, in a world that has largely moved on without you. The silence is not just an absence of sound. It is the absence of countless lives, countless stories, countless futures that were simply extinguished by the long, gray winter. In that vast, empty world, where the sun was a rumor and the cold was a constant companion, there remained a precious few, perhaps as few as 1,000, perhaps 3,000 souls, scattered across the immense, ash-choked landscape. These were the survivors, and they were us. Imagine yourself among them. You are one of these precious few. The world around you is immense, terrifyingly empty. Every sound, every shadow is amplified by the profound silence. You walk with a constant vigilance, your senses sharpened by necessity. Your eyes scan the horizon, not just for food or shelter, but for any sign of another living soul. A wisp of smoke, a distant call, a faint track in the frozen ground 40. Any signal that you are not utterly alone. Fear is a constant, low hum beneath your skin. It's not the sudden, sharp fear of a predator, but the deep existential dread of a world that has turned hostile. Confusion clouds your thoughts. Why has the sun abandoned us? Why has the world gone silent? Your elders, those who remember a different world, speak in hushed tones of green lands and warm rains, tales that now sound like myths, distant dreams. You cling to their words, to the warmth of their presence, for they are the keepers of memory, the last link to a time before the endless gray. You huddle together, a small, fragile knot of warmth against the immense cold. The world outside your small circle of firelight is a vast, unknowable darkness, filled with the mournful whispers of the wind. You look into the faces around you, the weathered lines of the elders, the wide, searching eyes of the children, the grim determination of the hunters. These faces are your world. These are the people who share your fear, your hunger, and your fragile hope. Who were they, these survivors? They were not special in any grand, heroic sense. They were simply the ones who, through a combination of luck, resilience, and perhaps a deep, unyielding instinct for life, managed to endure. They were the ones who found a hidden spring, who discovered a forgotten grove of frost-resistant plants, who learned to track the last few desperate animals. They were the ones who held on, breath by painful breath. You feel the weight of this survival. Every decision is critical, every resource precious. The world has become so huge, so utterly empty. The vastness is oppressive, a constant reminder of how few you are, how vulnerable. Yet, there is a fierce, quiet determination that flickers within you, within all of you. It is the primal drive to live, to continue, to find a way through the unending night. When you gather around the meager fire, the flames dance, casting flickering shadows on the cave walls. These shadows are your companions, moving and shifting like ancient spirits. You lean close to hear the soft breathing of your tribe, the gentle murmur of voices, the crackle of the precious wood. In these moments, the terror of the vast empty world outside recedes. Just a little. You are connected, a small, beating heart of humanity in a world that seems to have forgotten how to live. This small band of survivors, your ancestors carried within them the genetic blueprint for every human being alive today. Every one of us, every unique individual, every bustling city, every intricate technology, every piece of art, every story ever told Twindy, it all stems from this tiny, desperate group. They are the origin point, the slender thread that connects all of humanity back to a time of profound darkness and unimaginable struggle. They looked into the abyss, and they did not falter. They are the reason you are here tonight, safe and warm. The instinct, primal and undeniable, pulled them towards the coast. Inland the world was a silent, frozen tomb, but a whisper on the wind, a faint, salty tang in the air, promised something different. You felt it in your bones, a deep-seated knowing that somewhere beyond the desolate plains and skeletal forests, there was a boundary where the ice lost its grip. The journey was a blur of numbing cold and gnawing hunger, each step a testament to a will to survive that defied logic. You carried your child, a bundle of shivering hope, close to your chest, feeling the fragile beat of its heart against your own. The silence of the land was broken only by the crunch of frost underfoot and the ragged gasp of your own breath, each exhale a cloud against the perpetual twilight. Then, one day, a different sound began to seep into the vast quiet. A low, persistent rumble, a deep, ancient breath. It grew slowly, steadily, until it filled the air. A rhythmic pulse that was both terrifying and strangely comforting. The ocean. You stumbled forward, your eyes accustomed to the muted grays and browns of the glacial landscape, now straining for a glimpse of this promised blue. And there it was, not blue, not yet, but a vast, restless expanse of dark, churning water under the perpetually shrouded sky. It stretched to the horizon, a colossal, living thing crashing against the land with a force that made the very ground tremble beneath your feet. The air here was different. Still cool, yes, but it carried a dampness, a softness that wasn't the razor-sharp bite of the inland wind. It smelled of salt and something else, something green and alive, 2D, seaweed, kelp, the promise of life. Along the rugged coastline, cliffs rose like ancient guardians, sculpted by millennia of wind and wave. And within these cliffs, carved by the relentless sculptor of time, were caves. Not the shallow overhangings they had huddled under before, but deep, echoing chambers, dark mouths opening into the rock face. You found one, a vast opening that led into a cool, damp interior. The sound of the waves, once distant, was now a constant, soothing roar, a rhythmic ebb and flow that filled the space. It was a sound that spoke of endlessness, of a world that continued to breathe and move, even when the sun had hidden its face. Inside, the air was still, protected from the biting wind that still scoured the exposed land. It smelled of damp earth and salt, a primal scent that settled deep in your chest, calming the frantic flutter of your heart. This was a sanctuary. The walls were cool to the touch, smooth in places, rough in others. Water dripped from the ceiling in a steady, soft rhythm, echoing in the cavern. Here, the world felt smaller, more contained, yet infinitely safer. The vast, terrifying emptiness of the land was replaced by the solid embrace of rock. You laid your child down on a patch of dry earth, pulling furs around them, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, a profound sense of relief washed over you. The roar of the ocean became a lullaby, a deep ancient hum that promised protection. This was where you would make your stand. This was the last fortress of humanity, nestled against the restless heart of the world. The ocean, which had seemed so alien and vast, was now a comforting presence, a living wall against the desolation. You could almost feel its immense, steady warmth radiating through the rock, a testament to its enduring power to regulate, to sustain, to offer a glimmer of hope in the longest winter the world had ever known. The land had offered little, but the sea, it hummed with a different kind of promise. The initial awe of the ocean slowly gave way to a focused, urgent curiosity. Survival demanded ingenuity, and the coastal landscape presented a new, unfamiliar pantry. Gone were the vast herds of migratory animals that had once sustained them, vanished into the frozen interior, or simply succumbed to the famine. Here, the hunt was different. It was slower, more patient, a dance with the rhythms of the tide. You learned to read the water, to understand its ebb and flow, its secrets. When the tide retreated, it left behind a treasure trove. You watched, then mimicked, the movements of your companions. Hands, once skilled at shaping flint for spears, now became adept at prying open shells. You felt the cold shock of the water as you waded into the shallows, your fingers nimble, searching along the rocky ledges under the damp seaweed. Mussels, limpets, abalone. These became the new sustenance. Each shell was a small victory, a tiny, briny morsel of life. The work was meticulous, repetitive, almost meditative. You would crouch by the water's edge, a small, sharpened stone in your hand, carefully prying the tenacious creatures from the rock. The gentle click of the shell as it came free, the cool, smooth feel of it in your palm. Back in the cave, around a low, carefully tended fire, you would meticulously shuck them, the soft scraping of the stone blade, the gentle pop as the mussel gave way, revealing the tender meat within. It was a slow, deliberate rhythm that filled the days, a stark contrast to the desperate, frantic hunts of the past. This forced dietary shift was profound. The seafood, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, provided crucial nutrients that fueled not just their bodies but their minds. It was a silent biological revolution, an accidental upgrade to the very organ that defined them as humans. Your brain, under the pressure of survival, was being subtly reshaped, enhanced by the bounty of the sea. New neural pathways formed, connecting the precise movements of tool, making with the abstract thought needed for planning and problem solving. Days unfolded with a quiet purpose. The rising and falling of the tide dictated their schedule. There was the constant rhythmic sound of the waves, a backdrop to the more intimate sounds of their new life, the soft crunch of empty shells underfoot, the murmur of voices as they shared their meager catch, the focused breathing as someone carefully sharpened a stone tool, honing it to a razor edge, and not for a kill, but for a meal. You watched, fascinated, as a companion used a smooth, flat stone to grind the tough fibers of a plant, perhaps a root or a piece of kelp, into a more digestible paste. It was a slow, deliberate process, each movement precise and economical, born of necessity and passed down through observation. The tools evolved too, beyond simple flakes. They crafted specialized implements for prying, scraping, cutting, and grinding. You felt the smooth, cold weight of a bone awl in your hand, used for piercing shells or hides. The rough grip of a hammerstone used to crack open tougher shells. These were not just objects, they were extensions of their will, a testament to their adaptability. Life by the sea was less about brute force and more about intricate knowledge, about understanding the subtle language of the tides, the habits of the creatures within, and the precise application of human ingenuity. It was a quieter, more reflective existence, yet one that demanded constant learning, constant adaptation, forging them into something new, something more resilient. But as the sun continued its long, slow retreat behind the perpetual veil of ash, the nights remained a vast, consuming darkness. The coastal caves offered shelter from the wind, and the ocean provided food, but the chill, a deep, pervasive cold, was a constant companion. And against this encroaching darkness, this endless winter night, there was only one true champion, fire. It was the heart of their world, the pulsing core of their existence. In the vast, echoing chambers of the cave, a carefully tended campfire burned, a fragile beacon against the immensity of the night. You would sit close, so close you could feel the radiating warmth on your face, a blissful contrast to the icy air that still clung to the cave's edges. The crackle and hiss of the burning wood was a symphony, a constant, comforting presence. The scent of wood smoke, earthy and slightly acrid, became the smell of home, of safety, of life itself. Around this flickering heart, the last survivors of humanity gathered. Perhaps 1,000, perhaps 2,000 souls, huddling together against the cold and the dark. The firelight danced on the rough cave walls, creating shifting shadows that seemed to tell stories of their own. Faces etched with the lines of hardship and resilience were softened by the amber glow. Eyes once wide with fear now held a deep, quiet reverence for the flames. This was more than just physical warmth. It was the warmth of connection. In the flickering light, voices were softer, murmurs filled the air. Stories were shared, whispered tales of the world before the darkness, of hunts and harvests, of loved ones lost. These were the seeds of language nurtured in the shared space of the firelight. As the flames consumed the wood, they also consumed the silence, filling it with the low hum of human interaction, the soft laughter, the gentle comfort of proximity. You would lean against a companion, feeling the steady rhythm of their breathing, a silent assurance that you were not alone. The vast, indifferent universe outside the cave mouth, with its hidden sun and freezing winds, was held at bay by this small, precious circle of light. It was here, around the fire, that instincts blossomed into culture. Plans were made, tools were discussed, knowledge was passed from elder to child. The fire extended their days, allowing for more time for complex thought, for social bonding, for the very evolution of their minds. As the hours stretched on, some would drift into sleep, their forms silhouetted against the glowing embers, their breathing deep, even. The firekeeper, a silent guardian, would gently add another piece of wood, sending a shower of sparks dancing upwards, momentarily illuminating the high ceiling of the cave. The rhythmic crackle, the soft glow, the quiet presence of others joined. These were the lullabies of the last humans. You watched the flames, mesmerizing in their dance, feeling the deep, ancient comfort of being safe, warm, and together. The world outside was still cold, still dark, but within this circle of light there was peace. There was hope, and there was the enduring spirit of humanity, flickering but never extinguished. Sleep came easily here, wrapped in the embrace of firelight and the quiet pulse of a surviving tribe. The fire crackled, a living, breathing heart in the vast, indifferent darkness. Around it, the last few thousand souls of humanity huddled close. They were not just a tribe, they were a bottleneck, a slender thread connecting all that came before to all that would ever be. Imagine for a moment the sheer, breathtaking improbability of it all. Out of perhaps hundreds of thousands, or even millions of early humans scattered across the continents, only this tiny, fragile cluster remained. They were the sum total of humanity's future, cradled in the dim light of a few flickering flames. This is why, when you look around today, at the vast tapestry of human faces, the differences you see are so incredibly small. A whisper, a nuance, a subtle shift in the melody of our shared song. We are all, every single one of us, direct descendants of these few, brave, shivering souls. The blood that courses through your veins tonight, warm and steady, once flowed through theirs, chilled by glacial winds, warmed by the same small fires. Your DNA is a living chronicle, a library that has survived burning down 1,000 times, each page whispering tales of survival, of resilience, of a bond forged in the deepest winter. Think of it. In that time, distinctions of tribe, of language, of custom began to blur into something far more fundamental. They were not just individuals, they were us. They were humanity distilled to its rawest, most essential form. Every fear shared, every morsel divided, every story murmured into the smoke, filled air, wove them closer together. They were, in the most profound sense, family. Not by choice, but by the brutal, beautiful hand of necessity. The genetic tapestry of our species became incredibly tight. A single, strong cord woven from a handful of individual strands. When you feel the chill of a winter night, or the warmth of a shared meal, or the simple comfort of another human presence, you are touching an echo of that ancient time. You are feeling the imprint of a world where every touch was precious, every moment of warmth a miracle, every fellow human a lifeline. The sheer intimacy of their shared existence is almost unfathomable to us now, in our world of billions. But in their world, reduced to a mere handful, every heartbeat resonated with every other. They were a single, collective organism, breathing together, hoping together, surviving together. This shared ancestry is not just a scientific fact, it is a profound comfort. It means that you are never truly alone. You carry within you the genetic memory of that collective struggle, that shared triumph. You are a living testament to their endurance, their ingenuity, their unbreakable will to simply be. Every cell in your body sings the song of those who huddled by the fire, watching the embers pulse like a dying heart, wondering if the sun would ever truly return. And in that deep, quiet knowledge there is a solace that transcends time, a sense of belonging to something far, far older and more resilient than any single life. You are a living thread in an unbroken chain, a testament to the power of a bond forged in the deepest, darkest night. And then, after what must have felt like an eternity, something began to shift, imperceptibly at first. A subtle lightening in the perpetual twilight, a fractional, almost unnoticeable softening of the razor-sharp air. The planet slowly, painfully began to heal. The volcanic dust which had veiled the sun for 1,000 years began its slow, majestic descent. It settled, grain by grain, on the frozen earth, on the skeletal trees, on the still surfaces of the ice-bound lakes. It was a long goodbye from the shadow, a gradual retreat of the great winter. Imagine the first morning. Not just a faint glow, but a true, undeniable shaft of golden light, piercing the gray shroud. It would have felt like a dream, a forgotten memory resurfacing from the deepest parts of the mind. The survivors, those who had known nothing but the muted light and the endless cold, would have stepped cautiously from their caves, their eyes blinking against the unfamiliar brilliance. The world was still scarred, still raw, but it was breathing again. The ice began to recede. Drop by slow, deliberate drop. Season by arduous season. Water, once locked away in frozen stillness, began to flow again, carving new paths, whispering new songs. The ground, once hard as stone, softened, thawed, and revealed the patient earth beneath. And then the green. Oh, the green. The first tentative shoots, pushing through the ash and the thawed soil. A vibrant, defiant emerald against the muted browns and grays that had dominated their world for generations. It would have been a sight to bring tears to eyes that had forgotten how to weep for joy. The air itself would have changed, no longer thick with ash and the biting edge of frost, but carrying the fresh, clean scent of damp earth, of new growth of the vast, open sky. The silence, once heavy and oppressive, would have been broken by new sounds. The gentle rustle of leaves, the murmur of a flowing stream, and then the most miraculous sound of all, the tentative, hopeful song of a bird. A single clear note, echoing through the vast, recovering landscape, a promise of life reborn. The animals, too, would have begun their slow return. Small creatures, then larger ones, emerging from their hidden refuges, drawn by the scent of fresh vegetation. The rhythm of life, disrupted for so long, was slowly, steadily reasserting itself. It was a rebirth on a grand scale, witnessed by a handful of humanity. They would have watched with a quiet awe as the world painted itself anew, stroke by slow stroke, bringing back the colors, the sounds, the very breath of life that had been stolen away. They had endured, they had waited, and now the earth was keeping its promise. The long night was over. The sun had returned. And now, here you are in this moment, a long night is over for you. The chilling winds of the glacial age have long since ceased their howl. The volcanic ash has settled into the deep layers of the earth, forgotten by all but the stones and the patient soil. Tonight you are not shivering in a cave, watching embers fade. You are not listening for the distant growl of a predator or the whisper of an approaching storm. You are safe. Feel the softness beneath you, the warmth that surrounds you, the quiet hum of your modern world, so different from the stark silence of that ancient earth. You are the dream that those shivering ancestors dreamed. You are the culmination of their impossible survival, their unwavering hope. Every comfort you experience tonight, every breath of warm, clean air, every moment of peace is a direct legacy of their struggle. The tigers are gone, the cold is shut out. The hunger is a distant memory, a story told in the quiet hum of your own satisfied body. You carry their story within you, in every beat of your heart, in the ancient wisdom of your instincts, in the way you seek comfort and connection. But you no longer need to fight for survival in the same way. Their fight allows for your peace. As you lie here, feel the weight of that history, but let it be a comforting weight, a blanket of resilience woven through 70,000 years. You are not alone. You are connected to that unbroken chain, to those who saw the sun disappear and reappear. They endured so that you could thrive. They watched the stars, wondering if the dawn would ever come, so that you could rest, secure in the knowledge that it always will. Let the sounds of your world, soft and familiar, lull you. The gentle rhythm of your own breathing, the quiet stillness of your room, the echoes of a story from a time so far removed, yet so intimately connected to you. Allow your body to sink deeper into the comfort of your bed. Let your mind drift, knowing that you are safe, you are warm, you are home. The journey is over for tonight. The ancient world recedes, leaving you in the quiet embrace of the present. Close your eyes. Feel the gratitude for this moment, for this safety, for the incredible legacy of life that flows within you. Let go of any lingering thoughts, any small worries. They are not for this night. This night is for peace. This night is for rest. Sleep well, survivor. You have earned your peace. The long night is truly over.